Alright everyone, hope you are well. We are of course still in the midst of the international break, but very soon Celtic will return. We've got a league to win, 8 matches left. We're hoping to wrap up the league title and hopefully not need all 8 matches to do so. Scottish Cup is there as well, semi-final against St Johnstone to come, and a realistic chance for the team to go for a 6th treble in 9 seasons, to go along with a couple of doubles as well. So there's a lot still to look forward to this season. But on today's video, just with it being the international break, I just want to peek forward a little bit and look and possibly preview the summer transfer window. What can we expect to see from Celtic? Who's likely to be coming in? Who's likely to be leaving? All of that stuff, because it's a pretty important one. I know every transfer window is bigged up and it's important, but with Rangers probably better next season than they were this year, and Champions League qualifiers back on the horizon, it is a very important one. Should say, as always, if you feel you're going to enjoy this video or enjoy any of the other videos that I've done in the past, please consider subscribing to the channel. It takes absolutely no time. Well, that's a lie. It takes about 2 or 3 seconds. We're very close, agonisingly close to 14,000 subscribers as well. Also, if you're after a VPN, we do have NordVPN's wonderful offer still going. It's available in the description right at the top, or nordvpn.com/CelticAM. Okay, I guess the obvious place to start then is what does this Celtic squad need to take the next step next season? And I'm firmly of the belief that you talk about Europe when you're doing that. Obviously Europe only probably makes up a quarter or so of the fixtures we play every season, in fact less than that probably. But I think if you look at Europe and what are the next steps we can make to make an improvement again next season, then I think the feeling is that the domestic stuff will take care of itself. So strive for the Europe stuff, domestic stuff takes care of itself. And improvement in Europe next season, what does that look like? Well, it's a bit different next year, Europe for us. I think rather than, maybe this season we had one target, and that target was finishing inside the top 24, which we managed. I think next season, potentially we get 2 or even 3 targets. So number one, you would look at, can we qualify for the Champions League phase? We're going to have 1 round of qualifying to come through. It's going to be a challenge. We may not even be seeded. I think it's like 60-40 in our favour that we would be seeded, but we don't know how things are going to play out. If you manage to get into that tournament, the league phase of the Champions League, your next target becomes, can we finish inside the top 24 again? That might be harder next season. There's a fair chance if we get there, we might get harder fixtures because they were relatively kind this year in terms of some of the teams we could have played. So top 24, and then even potentially if you're looking to improve on this season, could we even get beyond where we managed this year? Could we get beyond that first knockout round? I know that's way in the distance, but if you do get into the top 24, good chance you don't get quite as hard a team as Bayern Munich in that round, and potentially can you go even further? So as much as I say that's a lot of checkpoints away, and the first one is just qualifying for the tournament, I think that's what Celtic should be aiming for. And as I say, obviously domestically win every trophy as well. So there's obviously going to be specifics with regards to the transfer window, and certain players are possibly going to leave, and there's obviously certain positions, namely left back, where we're going to need to look to sign a player. So we'll get on to all of that, but I think just generally what I'm looking for from Celtic in the summer window is, and this is a bit of a kind of cop-out answer I guess, but to have the squad stronger at the end of the window than when we go into it. You can just call me Peter lol. But yeah, I mean, there's a couple of games recently. You look at our last game, the derby, and the bench we had that day was pretty weak. I mean, nothing against the young players, but there weren't too many proven first-team players there. And I know we were missing a few through injury, but injuries happen over the course of a season. I think Bayern Munich as well, Brendan Rodgers made a couple of subs in Munich, and maybe if we'd had some better quality off the bench, we could have potentially taken that to extra time, fresher legs, kept the ball better as the game went on. So I think that's an obvious thing for me, adding quality in certain positions, just beefing up the squad slightly, but with real quality. So here is, without further ado, the squad we're looking at for next season at the moment. So yeah, 2 players leaving us as things stand. One is likely to be Greg Taylor. Seems pretty likely now that he'll be away. Dinamo Zagreb, the most likely destination. Jeff Schlupp as well, obviously only on loan at present. We'll talk a wee bit more about him later on and the prospects of him coming back permanently. Kieran Tierney is in, and doesn't it look good with him at left back, even though he does look pretty lonely at the moment. There's a few players returning from loans as well that I haven't included in this because quite simply I don't think any of them have any sort of future at Celtic. So we're talking Gustav Lagerbielke, Kwon, Marco Tilio, Stephen Welsh, Lewis Palma. They're all back this summer. Odin Holmes back at the end of the calendar year. I don't think any of those 6 have a future at the club. Matthew Anderson, I guess, is one of the young players out on loan who may have a future. Again, I've not included them in that graphic because I think we'll be looking to sign another left back on top of Tierney. So if we go back to this, who from here will leave the club this summer? Difficult to say. Mike Narovsky, I would say, is likely to move on. I just don't think he's fancied by the manager, even though I do think there's a good defender in there, and I guess we saw that in the recent derby. I just don't think he's going to play when Liam Scales or Austin Trusty return. Real Hatate might move on. He's contracted for another 3 years after this season, so we're in no rush to sell him, but I think he'll have been at the club for 3.5 years, so it just feels like he might want to move on into a better league at that stage. Not a bigger club, but a better league. I think if you got somewhere around 15 million for Real Hatate, that would be really good business. I don't know if you'd quite get to that, but he's a talented player, clearly, just maybe some consistency issues. But that would potentially open up a space, or maybe even 2 in midfield. And there is a feeling, I think, with Celtic every summer that a star might leave. Now, that star might be Real Hatate, but the other ones you would look at are either Nicholas Kuhn, who's had a bit of a breakout season, gone off it a little bit in recent weeks, but there's still going to be real interest in him after what he did in the Champions League, goals against Leipzig and Bayern Munich, for example. Daizen Maeda has been our player of the season. I think everyone or most people would agree. So there's going to probably be interest in him as well. And there's always with Daizen Maeda, you're not quite sure with him being Japanese, is there any point where he might want to go back home? I think his kids are getting to kind of the age where they'll be going to school and stuff. So I don't know if that might provide complications there. So that's one to keep an eye on as well. But just generally in terms of the squad, I think those 3 goalkeepers are what it will be next season. I think the 2 right backs will be there next season. Centre backs, as I say, Narovsky might move on. I know some people would like to see us sign a centre back. I think that's fair enough. I think Austin Trusty's been pretty good all in so far, and you would hope that next season he can be even better, forming that relationship with Cameron Carter-Vickers. Midfield, as I say, if Hatate moves on, and there's no guarantees there will be room for another one, possibly Lennon Miller. Again, we'll come on to that. Maybe even 2 in midfield. And the obvious one as well is a forward. Now, I say forward because I've got Daizen Maeda down as a left winger here. I think that's where Brendan Rodgers probably wants him in an ideal world next year. But Maeda's been so good up front that I wouldn't be totally surprised if he's viewed as a striker for us next season, as he is right now. If that happens, we clearly need to sign another winger. So you're either talking signing a top striker or a top left winger. My hunch is that it would be a striker and would have Daizen Maeda playing off the left again. So again, the players that we end up signing, there's a fair chance me and you aren't going to have heard of them at this point. I mean, how many of us had heard of Arnie Engels or Nicholas Kuhn before we signed him, or Jota before we signed him originally? So the club's scouting is going to play obviously a big role here, and I think generally they've done quite well, certainly in recent years. I mean, summer before last was a bit of a nightmare, but I feel like we're kind of looking at a level up of players since then, and certainly in the money we spent last year. So There's going to be a number of new names that none of us can foresee at this stage unless you have access to the Celtic scouting documents. Remember the ones that got leaked around COVID times and they had like a bunch of players? God, those were fun days. There are a few players that I think we can confidently say are going to be talked about a fair bit this summer. The first one would be Jeff Schlupp, who looks like he could be the left back that we signed to go along with Kieran Tierney. His situation is that he's out of contract with Crystal Palace at the end of the season, so we wouldn't have to pay a transfer fee to sign him. He does, however, come with the complication of being on a pretty hefty wage at the moment. I think it's widely reported to be £60,000 a week, which is not bad. I even saw it reported when I was looking today that we're paying half of that at the moment. So we're paying $30,000. Even paying half of his wage would probably make him one of our top earners. So would he take a severe wage cut next season? I'm not quite as sure that he wouldn't as maybe some people are. I think you look at Jeff Schlupp and is he going to get the guarantee of like £60,000 a week or even close to that next season? I'm not so sure. I don't know if there's too many Premier League clubs would be racing to sign him, if I'm honest. Not that he's a bad player, but just with his age and all that kind of stuff. So Celtic could probably give him, I don't know, a third of that, 20 grand, something like that. And he might really like the club. Obviously, Kieran Tierney's coming in and he'd probably be viewed as a backup, but he's still going to get a fair amount of game time next year. Brendan Rodgers, by the way, earlier this month was asked whether Schlupp will be signed permanently. He said, I don't know. I think initially it was just to come in and adapt to our playing style and support the squad, and anything further than that we will look at later on down the line. So Brendan Rodgers not giving much away there. I think Celtic will want to sign Schlupp, put it that way. I think watching his performances so far, you would have to say that he would be a good signing. So I hope that's the case and I hope we do bring him in. But that's going to probably rumble throughout the summer. Plenty of reports saying that we're interested in Lennon Miller. I think the wide understanding is we've scouted him in recent times. He's likely to leave Motherwell this summer. It seems like the time he would move on. They are said to be wanting a record fee, even more than the $3.25 million we paid for David Turnbull in COVID times. Sorry for mentioning that. And yeah, there's going to be a fair amount of interest in Lennon Miller. I've gone on record previously on the channel and saying that I do like him. I think he'd be a good signing for a number of reasons. He's young, he's clearly highly rated. I do always think Celtic should be looking to sign the best players in Scotland. I know it doesn't always work out with that. Like David Turnbull wasn't a disaster or anything, but he didn't live up to the expectations, clearly. But I think the feeling is Lennon Miller could certainly do that, and he's a bit of a star, even though Steve Clarke doesn't see that. So I would love to see us move for Lennon Miller. If Hatate moves on, bring Lennon Miller in, potentially another midfielder. I think that would really leave us well stocked in that position. And in terms of a striker, Matthias Kvistgaarden is also likely to come up. He's the Brøndby forward. He's managed 15 goals in 26 games this season. They're said to value him at around £11 million, which I think would be a record. What do we pay for Engels? Possibly pay more than that for Engels. It would certainly be very close to that. Again, there's going to be a number of teams interested in him, Bundesliga teams, etc. Very highly thought of player, young enough as well to improve. But I think we know Celtic have the money there to spend that kind on a player like Kvistgaarden. We did it on Engels and Ida in last summer and expect to see the club doing the same there. So, Kvistgaarden, Lennon Miller, Jeff Schlupp, all players that we're likely to be interested in. And yeah, I think just generally speaking, you want to see Celtic do their business early and efficiently. No laughing at the back, please. This summer, we have the added challenge of having a Champions League qualifier for the first time in a number of years, probably since Ange's first season. But it's not like a mid-July qualifier like we had in Brendan Rodgers' first spell. We are talking August the 19th or 20th for the first Champions League qualifier. The transfer window shuts 10 days or so after that. So it's not as if the club have to get every player in early. But it would certainly be good to have the squad improved and new signings settled in nice and early ahead of that Champions League qualifier. Obviously, having said that, I expect to see Celtic do pretty much all of our business in the final week of the window, because I think that's what we've tended to see in recent years. But it would be lovely to think that the club could be organised and really bring in the players that we need. You'd certainly be hoping no key players are sold until that Champions League qualifier has happened. I mean, you really don't want to lose Dyson Maeda or Nicholas Kuhn before then. But again, at Celtic, they did sell Kyogo right before a Champions League knockout tie against Bayern Munich, so there's always that. And it'll probably be the first real window where people are properly judging Paul Tisdale. I don't know, maybe that was the case in the winter window, but he'd been at the club maybe for 3 or 4 months at that stage. You'd certainly be hoping by now to see some improvements, and I just would love to see us doing business a lot quicker. I just think the last couple of windows, while arguably we've got most of what we needed in the end, and most of the signings have been successes, obviously with the exception of not bringing in a striker at the end of the January window, things have just taken far too long. You'd love to see Celtic just really get on with things this summer and be proactive rather than reactive, and just really improve that squad. I think it's a good squad that we've got right now, and a really good manager we've got. We've got lots of money in the bank, and I think we've really made strides in the past 12 months. Like, you think of how good this season was in Europe, some really good results when previously those results, I mean, 1-1 away to Bayern Munich, nobody would have expected that 12 months ago. So the club have made, and the team and the management have made real strides forward, but you just want to keep pushing forward, and we've got a pretty young, talented squad, and probably about as strong a squad as we've had in recent times. But I do still think with the modern challenges or the challenges of modern football, and if you have a few injuries, we are a little bit light in certain areas. So you just want really to have the squad strong in every single position, 2 players fighting for every position. I don't think we're a million miles away from that, but if we can do that, hold on to as many of our stars as possible. I think you're looking for, ideally, no major stars leave, but if one has to, that's fine. Any more than that, I don't think you want to see, and you just want to see Celtic keep pushing forward. So we're obviously a fair bit away from that. Well, I say that, we're probably only 2 and a bit months away from the window opening, but I think it's going to be a really exciting summer market again, and Celtic are in a good place now, but let's push forward. Okay, that's my thoughts for today, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed it. Have a good rest of your Tuesday. I'll be back tomorrow.